In this video, we're going to be replacing the cylinder deactivation manifold. It's located underneath the intake on this 2007 to 2013 Chevy Silverado. Let's get into it. We're going to disconnect the battery using a 10mm socket, loosen up the negative terminal. If you need to take this bracket off to access it, you can take these bolts out with a 13mm socket. Otherwise, you can reach underneath and grab the cable, slide it up and out of the way. Now I'm going to remove the engine cover. Just grab underneath here, pop it up, and slide it out. Now we're going to take the worm clamps off for the snorkel. Use an 8mm socket. Loosen that one up. And over near the throttle body, loosen that one up. Now just use a trim tool. Separate the coolant hose from this bracket. Move that aside. And there's a vacuum hose right here. Just pop this off. It just comes off. Then just pull the snorkel up and out. Pull it off over here. And then it comes up. Disconnect the map sensor right here. Just push down on the tab. And slide it off. Now I'm going to take this nut off, use a 10mm socket. Pull that out. This bracket is loose. Now we're going to take this plate off, use a 10mm socket, take these two bolts out first. On the back bolt, I'm going to use a 10mm ratchet wrench because you can't access it with a socket. Take that bolt off and take this plate off. Slide it out. Disconnect the connector on the alternator right there and just push down on the tab. Then you'll have a little bit of slack with these wires. You're going to pull these up and out of the way. I'm just going to use a bungee cord and just tie it up. Keep it out of the way. That's good. We want to disconnect the fuel injectors. There is a safety clip. You want to just use a pick, get underneath this clip. And just pull it up. And then you can push on the tab and slide it off. You want to do that till there's 4 on this side and 4 on the other side. If you have to, you can try pulling it up in the front, just like that. And slide those out. And get those all off. And then you're going to do the same on the other side. Take all the connectors off of those injectors. And disconnect this hose right here. There's a little tab on the back. You just slide it to the right and you can pull that off. And then now you can come on this side. Disconnect this connector right here on the purge solenoid. Just slide the tab over, slide it out and out of the way. Taking a straight blade screwdriver, going right in between the bracket and the solenoid. You want to pry the bracket over a little bit, then this will slide up. And we can disconnect right here, just push down, twist it a little bit, and slide the solenoid off. This hose right here, you want to follow this back to where the valve cover is, and then there's another little tab you got to slide, and then you can pull that out. And when you're trying to take this hose off, this cannot pass over this stud. You don't want to bend this out of the way or you could break the plastic. So we're going to take this stud off. Using a 10mm socket, take this off. If you can't get a socket over that, you can just use a 10mm wrench. And take that off. Now take this pipe and we can slide it out like this. And then you can disconnect it right here. It slides right out. In the fuel line, we want to bleed off the pressure, so we're going to take this cap off right there. You want to use a rag or an absorbing mat. Just get underneath here because you're going to lose a little bit of fuel. And then it's always a good idea to wear safety glasses while you're doing this. And then just take a screwdriver or a pick and just on the Schrader valve, just push down. I'm just going to cover it so I don't get splashed. And just a little bit of fuel comes out. It's just to relieve the pressure. That's good. Now I'm going to take this clip off, just grab from the back and slide it forward. That's just a lock or a retainer. Now I'm going to take a rag underneath the fuel line. We're going to disconnect that. You're going to lose a little bit of fuel doing this. And we're going to need a special tool to slide in there. A fuel disconnect tool. Pull the line forward towards the front of the vehicle and push the tool in. Again, you should wear safety glasses doing this. And then with the tool pushed in, then you can grab the line and slide it back. And the line comes off like that. Just put the rag over there, and then I'll just grab the tool, slide the tool off. Disconnect the connector right here. Just use a pick. There's a little lock on there, and then you push down and slide that off. Then this wire is going to be in the way for the alternator. You want to take that off. Just slide this boot back, and then there's a nut. I'm going to take a 10mm wrench, loosen up the nut right here. Take the nut off. And it's important that you disconnect the battery for this. You don't want this to arc out. Just so I don't lose that nut, I'll just put that back on there. Now on the side of the intake, there is 8mm bolts. You're going to use an 8mm socket. Take those off. Don't get those confused with the fuel rail bolts. We're going to leave the fuel rail attached. So loosen those up. And they are caged, so you don't have to pull them out. There. So there's 1, 2, 3. So there's 5 on this side, and there'll be 5 on the other side. Wires are in your way, just move those out of the way. Those are all loose. Now just grab the intake, rock it up, pull it up, and just you want to tip it a little bit. Watch out for the wires. Forward. And it slides right out. this hose that goes to the brake booster. If you follow that along, you can see it on the brake booster, and just grab it. Right here, and we'll just rock it back and forth. You're gonna hear a little bit of air, and it just pops out. And just take that off. And slide it out. The intake out, we're just gonna take these bolts out, just twist to the side. This back one on the passenger side has a little bracket, just pull it out of the bracket. Set all those bolts aside. Disconnect this connector right here. Just use a screwdriver or a pick and move the lock tab up. Push down on the connector, slide it off. To take this sensor out, there is a special socket you can use, but you don't necessarily need it. You can use a 1 1/16 socket. And take the sensor out. There it is. And disconnect the connector right here. Just push up on the tab, slide it out, push it out of the way. Now we're going to take these bolts out, use a 13mm socket. I'll just take the bolts out just so I don't have any trouble removing the plate. I'm just going to take a pry bar, just get underneath here a little bit just to release it. And you pull it up and slide it right out. Now we're going to take a rag, this brake parts cleaner, and just clean up the surface area. Just make sure you don't get any debris down into the engine. Just try to wipe it away. Oops. The manifold comes with new bolts in it. What I'm going to do is take my 13mm socket and just loosen these all up, just so they're like that. Now I'm going to install the manifold and just slide it in place. Just watch out for the connector in the back. You don't want to crush it. It's okay. And then you can get these all started. Start them by hand first. And we'll start tightening these down. Just get them close. Now I'm going to torque the bolts to 18 foot-pounds in a cross pattern, starting in the middle and working my way outwards. And the last one, you can go around again, double check if you want. This should be good though. That's good. Now put the connector in, line that up, lock it down. Take the sender, line it up. You want to make sure the new manifold has an oil pressure sensor screen. If it does not, you're going to have to transfer it from the old one or get a new screen. If you're reusing the old sender, you want to put a little pipe sealer on there just to keep the threads from leaking. I'll tighten this down. Then you want to torque this to 26 foot-pounds. Connect the connector, line it up, lock it down, push down on the lock. Now you want to take a rag and some brake parts cleaner and just clean around the ports for the intake. And just make sure nothing falls down in there. Do the best you can. If you have to, use some compressed air and spray it out. Now line the intake up. Just slide it in place. Make sure you go under the wires. Make sure you take this hose over here. Make sure you run this hose behind the wires. And reattach it to the brake booster. Just slide it in slowly. That's good. Now take the bolts, get the bolts all started. And put these bolts in on the other side. And then one in the back underneath that bracket. And then get those all started, snug those up. I'm starting from the middle and working my way outward. And just snug those all up. Back one. Now we're going to torque these bolts, working our way from the center outward. The first sequence, we're going to torque these to 3.7 foot-pounds. And just work your way out. Forward. And back. All the way forward. Slide that off. And this one. And that back one. After you do that one time, then go around again and torque them again at 7.4 foot-pounds. front one. And it's back. Last one. There we go. That's it. And take the fuel line, line that up, and lock it down. You can take that lock. It's going to go on this side and lock that down as well. I take this tube, slide this in position here, and then twist it. Go around the other tubes. And then you want to attach that to the valve cover in the back. And just lock that in place. Now put this stud in here. And snug that down. This bracket right here where we bent this tab, we just need to bend it back. Just use a straight blade screwdriver. Just bend it back a little bit. That should be good. You can take this solenoid, line this up, lock it into the hose, and push it down on the bracket. And then the hose over here goes on the intake, lock that down. Now I'm just going to take the bungee cord off, move the wires back in position. Those are all in position. Now we'll start connecting connectors. We got the map sensor right here. Lock that in. The alternator, plug that in. This wire goes to the solenoid right here. Connect that. Then you have the fuel injectors. Now line the fuel injectors up and push those in. Push the locks on. And lock them down. Make sure you put them in the right spot because you can swap them by accident. Do the other side. And lock these down. That looks good. And the alternator wire. Take that nut off. And attach that cable. And I'll snug that down. And snug that up. Now put that cover back on. Right there. Put the nut on and we'll tighten that down. snug it up. And put this bracket on. And put the bolts in. And tighten those down. And snug that up. And take the cap, put the cap on the fuel rail. And the connector for the throttle body, line that up. Lock that in. Take the snorkel, line this up. Put it over the air box. And on the throttle body. And push it down. You can take this hose right here, line that up. Lock that in place. And the coolant hose, push that retainer in there, right there, and tighten the worm clamps down. Now put the cover on, and line it up in the back. And then push it down. Now take the negative cable and hook up the battery. And we'll tighten that down. And snug that up. You can grab the cable, give it a wiggle, make sure it's tight. Now that we're done, we're going to go to the ignition, turn the key on, and then shut it off. And then turn the key on again. That's going to prime the fuel system because right now the fuel system's empty. There's air in there and it's not going to start up right away. So you want to cycle it 2 or 3 times and then you can start it up like normal.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.